welcome to All About Music and welcome to the session today. Thank you very much for coming. Um, I am Jataneel banerjee, as you can see my name up there, and I'm from Performing Rights Society, PRS, in the UK. I work as a relationship manager for Asia, which means whoever is our member, whether it is writer or a publisher from the region of Asia, I normally deal with them and ensure that whatever they need in terms of support, we are able to provide that. Today's session, as it says, interoperability between societies. So whatever I'm going to talk about will be in the light of the Performing Rights Society in the UK, PRS, and what we will do, I'll first do the presentation because it's a very kind of top level idea of what it is, and then we'll take the questions. So before I dive into the basics of how a society works and why a society exists, I'll just give you a quick brief of who PRS is, basically. So PRS is a royalty collection and distribution society in the UK. It's exactly what IPRS in India is. It's the same over there in the UK. It's a membership organization, so our members are songwriters, composers, publishers, and our customers, like any other society, our customers are music users. So radio, television, online platforms like YouTube, they are all customers essentially. We license the music usages on behalf of our members to the customers, and whatever money is kind of collected, that's been distributed as royalties for our members. That's essentially everything in a nutshell what PRS for music is. Before I delve further into the interoperability of the societies or even what society is, I think the backbone of our industry is copyright. I attended the morning session and my friend Atul, he explained copyright brilliantly. It was, I really enjoyed it. So I'm going to whiz through that. Before I talk about copyright, I just want to quickly, this is what I normally tell everybody. Everything originates from an idea. Unfortunately, there is no system or legal system in place to protect your idea. The only protection that can exist is the expression of an idea. How do you express that idea can be protected. In the entertainment world, or historically, it has been classified under 4 kinds of expression. You can express an idea in a literary form. You can write a poem or poetry. You can write a story. That's a literary expression. Can be in the form of a dramatic expression. You can choreograph something. You can do a play, presentation on stage. Musical expression, which I'm sure you're all familiar with. And artistic expression, which is painting or a photograph or something like that. So all these expressions can be protected by copyright. So you're familiar with this symbol, I guess. So copyright is a legal right, and that gives you control over what can be done with that copyright. So essentially, copyright can be classified broadly under economic right and moral right. So what we are going to talk about today is the economic right, the rights that you have, the legal rights that you have, based on which, when you control something, those rights, that is in exchange of money, that gives you the power to earn out of the copyright. It's essentially a bundle of rights, and I simplify this literally into one word each, just to kind of give an overview. Right to reproduce, So you can make copies of it when you create something. Once you have hundreds and thousands of copies, you distribute it. So that's another right. Performing rights. So when a particular song is performed live or broadcasted anywhere, if you can hear it, there is a right that is being explored. Adaptation rights. You change something with it. That is also another right. And display right. Like I said, there were 4 expressions: literary, dramatic, musical, and artistic. So display rights falls for the artistic one. What we are going to be kind of looking into are only of these 4 rights, especially for the societies, especially for PRs. We are going to look into reproduction rights and adaptation rights. And the reproduction right is popularly known as mechanical rights. Great. Now, once you have created a copyright, you have to manage it because there are multiple rights that just I have mentioned. So how do we manage that copyright? Once you have created, if you are an owner of a copyright, essentially the management starts from you. So how do we manage the copyright? Managing of copyright can be done collectively, or it can be done on an individual basis. There are certain rights which is easy to manage individually, but there are certain rights out of the 4 rights that I was kind of telling you. It's difficult to manage individually. So we are going to be concentrating on the collective management of copyright. So collective management of copyright is an option within the copyright system, essentially, which requires or allows the rights holders to administer their rights through a collective management organization. Sorry, this presentation will have a little bit of jargons here and there, but I can promise you it will be all clear. Yeah. Collective management organization, popularly we call it a CMO. So IPRS is a CMO, PRS is a CMO, PPL is a CMO. Any society that is collectively licensing copyright is generally known as CMO. So what are the tasks undertaken by a CMO? It monitors. It monitors where, when, and what works are used. It negotiates. Now this is where the power of collective rights management comes. Imagine if your music is played in a radio station. For you to go and negotiate a fee for yourself is going to be very, very difficult. Okay? But when collectively all the writers, all the publishers, get together and form an organization to, negotiate collectively, then you have a much better bargaining power. So a collective management organization does that. It will negotiate the tariffs and the conditions based on which a music usage will take place. Therefore, once the negotiation happens, you would license it. So the act of allowing somebody, or the publisher that you give out, is known as license. So the use of protected works on behalf of its members is the act of licensing. And finally, you would collect the fees and distribute it to the respective owners and the rights holders. So in a nutshell, these are all the tasks that a collective management organization would undertake. Now, in the light of what I have just said, let's look at PRS for music. So what is PRS for music? A little bit of a background. It's a brand name, and why it is a brand name, we'll come to it. It's known as royalty collectors. It's a membership organization, like any other CMO. It's globally connected. And this is where we will kind of talk about interoperability between societies. So when any society is formed in a particular region, in a geographical region, in a country, their remit of licensing and managing the rights of their members are limited within their territory. Therefore, if your music, which you have created in the country of India, gets performed in the UK, how would that be licensed and how would that be collected? That's where IPRS and PRS will collaborate. So PRS would license IPRS's repertoire or IPRS's members' work in the UK, collect the money and pass it on to IPRS for the distribution. And the same thing happens if a PRS member's work is performed in India, it's collected by IPRS and passed on. This is the simplest way I can put how the societies work with each other. So this is a network. That's why I'm saying globally connected. It's a network of societies that kind of operate together to ensure that the copyrights are licensed, the money is collected and distributed. And the other thing about PRS is it's a not-for-profit organization. It operates as a not-for-profit organization. So there are no shareholders. Whatever monies comes in after deducting the cost of running the organization, all of it is paid out as royalties. So PRS for Music is actually a brand name for two organizations, PRS and MCPS. So PRS licensed the performing rights in a copyright, and MCPS licensed the mechanical rights. PRS is run by the board, it's owned by its members, and provides services to MCPS. That's the arrangement. It's under the one umbrella. Unlike IPRS, which is one encompassing organization which is licensing both the performing rights and the mechanical rights together. Whereas in the UK, these are two separate organizations. MCPS is run by MCPS board and it is owned by NPA, which stands for Music Publishers Association in the UK. And this is a little history. PRS was formed in 1914, right in the midst of the First World War. This society has survived for over 100 years. I think next year is our 110th anniversary. MCPS was formed just 10 years later. We formed an alliance because it seemed like it's the same work that we are collecting for. It was rebranded to PRS for Music, and back in 2012, MCPS sold some of its shares, so it became even more integrated. It's just a quick background about it. Membership of PRS and MCPS. Who can be members of PRS and MCPS? Songwriters, composers, music producers. Please don't get confused by the word music producers. If they are contributing in the writing of a work, then they are entitled to kind of join. The reason we also mention music producers is because just to kind of clarify that although they are classed as music producers, if the writer or the composer considers them as a co-writer, then they are also entitled for the royalties. Music publishers and successors. Obviously, we are perishable beings. We're not going to be here forever. Once the writer passes away, for their successor, for the legal heirs, they would join and carry on receiving the royalties. Now let's quickly look at how PRS for Music work. And this is a basic functioning of any collection society or any CMO. This is the society. Over here it's PRS for Music. It can be any society. And these are all the customers. They would pay license fees and they would submit the usage information. Now, I'm going to pause a little bit here. The next important thing in how any society would function and function properly is the data. If the data is not there, regardless of a society collecting the money, we will not be able to pay it out. If we don't know who that money is for, we will not be able to pay it out. And I'm going to come back to this data later on. So we are receiving usage information on usage data into PRS. This is you, who is a member. You would then register the song. This is another set of data which is equally important. So when you write a piece of music, you would inform the society by registering the metadata with the society, so that the society knows this song exists. We match the data, the usage data and the existing data in our database, and that's how we pay out. And this principle is globally applicable to any society. There is no difference. Music registration data. So when you become a member of any society, it's your responsibility to ensure that the metadata of the music that is out there is registered with the society that you are a member of. So what are the absolute basic minimum you need in order to register the data? The title of the song, the writer details, who has written the music, who has written the lyrics, etc., etc. The publisher details. And if possible, ISRC, because that will help to connect sound recording with the actual registration of the work. Alternative titles, if there are any, and artist details. So you will see I have put some asterisks on those ones. Those are the absolute bare minimum you need to have as an information. But the rest three helps in today's digital world. Okay. In terms of the music usage data, like I was mentioning, where do we receive those music usage data from? Broadly, radio stations, TV stations, broadcasters, we would receive that information. Online services like YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music. And then music venues, festivals, live performances, that's where we could receive the data from. Now, if you look at a television channel, which is an audio-visual production, when they provide us with the usage data, it is in the form of a cue sheet. Now that's a very important piece of data and piece of information which is necessary for any society to distribute money for any audio-visual production. So I'm going to quickly go through what a cue sheet is. It looks something like that, but this format is nothing fixed. I'm just showing what is necessary in terms of having, what are the things that you should have on a cue sheet. A cue sheet source, sorry, I'm just going to go back again. I don't know how visible this is. Essentially, what we need on a cue sheet is the title of the cue, then who are the key stakeholders, I mean, who are the interested parties, its writers, publisher details, and if you have the ISWC numbers, which is the International Standard Works Code, the contemporary of ISRC for the sound recording, or if you have the identifier that your society would provide you. So in case of PRS, when you register a piece of work, we generate an identifier, which is known as tune code. That tune code, if you put, then we know exactly which one to match to. And some details about the duration, how much each cue is, and finally, what is the usage in it. So if it is a featured work, or if it is a background work. So for the songs, normally the songs, for example, if we take a film, Hindi film, or any film for that matter, where there is songs, the songs are generally known as featured because those are specially commissioned songs written for the film. And then there are background score, that means action is happening on the screen, but there are music which is going on in the background. So those are background. So it is important to mention what category that cue is. Normally, we receive cue sheets from broadcasters, collection societies, production companies, publishers and writers. Depending upon, we prefer receiving the cue sheet from a broadcaster, but sometimes they don't have it. So then we would source it from the other places. Sources of royalty collection. Where do we receive the royalties from? We receive the royalties from venues, gigs, clubs, small venues, concerts and festivals, television, radio stations, films, adverts. So in the UK, the exhibitors, the theatres are also licensed. I think in India it is not licensed. Yeah. US as well, there is no license for film theatres, but in the UK there is. So we would receive information from there. Downloads and streams, online world, audio and audiovisual products, and international usage. Again, interoperability of the society comes here again. So when any usages that happens in a particular territory, the local society would, collect that information and then pass it on. So that's how we would receive international usage information. But also, when members know that probably they are touring somewhere, they would inform us, and then we would ensure that the societies are kind of working together to ensure the money is coming. Oh, now, next, going forward, I want to just talk about the distribution part of it. Royalty distribution, on what basis? There is a lot that happens behind, obviously, when you become a member of a society sets up a lot of system behind to ensure that the society can be as accurate as possible, as fair as possible. So based on that, the distribution can be done as census. Means every minute of music is paid, every line by line of reporting is paid out. That is census. Sampling, sometimes what happens, the money that we receive as a license fee is not enough to actually pay line by line, because the value of copyright has to be, we need to ensure that the value of copyright is kind of maintained. So based on whatever the value is, we would then sample certain days in a year, and we will pay out based on those dates and usages. I'm not going into too much of detail, but there are lots of reasoning behind why sampling is done. And then finally, analogy. There are sources where we don't receive any usage data at all. For example, in this hotel, there is lots of music being played all around. Do you think anybody in this hotel would have the energy or the time to report which pieces of music are being played every day? I doubt. So what would a society do then? The society would then figure out an analogy, figure out which radio stations or what other sources of data that we are receiving can actually be as same or as equal to pretty much the music that probably they are playing. That's analogy. A quick pictorial review. We distribute 4 times a year, July, October, December, and April. And say, for example, if your music is performed in September, you can expect it to be paid in April. This is all available on our website. And now I want to just quickly talk about a very important initiative that PRS is taking, and that is our project Nexus. And this is an initiative that our CEO Andrew Martin has undertaken. It is powered by PRS, means it is steered by PRS. CSAC is supporting it. And the idea is we have recognized that a lot of money doesn't get paid out or doesn't get collected because of poor data. And one of the key things is a song can have multiple recordings, multiple versions of recordings. As long as we can actually link that ISWC, which is the identifier for a song, with all the different ISRCs, the payment of the royalties becomes much swifter and much accurate. So this is a project which has two different parts. One is the education part, which is our Get Paid guide. It's a website that we have set up. It's developing. So I would encourage all of you to kind of go to the website. It's available for anybody to use it. There is no kind of membership or anything or any kind of subscription. Go there and there is a clear idea you can get what is required in terms of data that you should definitely have. And the next part is our portal. So Nexus Metadata Portal is something that we are developing so that that data is stored, and the linking of metadata is an activity that is going to happen behind the scene, basically. So a lot of information we are going to now bring out about this initiative. You can get it all on our website, basically. Before I finish, I'm just going to share some numbers here. We have distributed roughly 836 million in 2022. Our cost to income ratio is 9.3%. Once upon a time it used to be 12.8, and we have managed to kind of bring it down to under 10%, which I think is every society is really striving to ensure as much money as possible we can pay out to the writers and publishers. And we have over 26 million works that are registered in our database, and we have 165,000 members, and it is growing, basically. It's a fantastic community of membership that we have. That's where I pause, and I can take questions if you have any. Yes?
Suppose if an artist who is writing a track and he has written and composed it and sung it, and we go to the label and we sell it out there, can you tell us what are the rights which are exploited out there, and what are the rights which stays with an artist for lifetime, even if it gets...
So if you have already assigned and transferred all your ownership to a label, that label is going to be the publisher. So the only rights that you retain is to receive the share of your royalties. That's what the rights you make. Any other question?
Hi. So you explained about the Nexus project, and you say that because of ISRC is not connected to the international standards board. Can you give an example, like in what circumstances the revenues are lost?
So it's when a recording is identified, in order to pay out the composers and the lyricists and the publishers, the underlying work also has to be identified correctly. So if there is a link between the recording and the underlying work, which is the composition and the lyrics, via the standard code, which is ISWC, then it is easier to identify because it is already linked. So when you click on the recording, it immediately shows the ISWC, and that ISWC will trace back to the copyright database of the societies, and they would have all the details of who needs to be getting paid. That's basically the chain. But if that chain is broken, so if there is an ISRC, but we don't know which ISWC that is linked to, then there is something that needs to be done in order to link it. So it takes time, it takes resources in order to get that. So if it is done from the outset, then the process becomes much easier. Does it answer your question?
Yes.
Yeah. There's a question there.
I just wanted to understand, so say for example, there is an NRI who is registered with IPRS, and he's registered with PRS. I'm not really sure if there is a restriction, because one side he's a citizen, second side he's possibly having a nationality. In that sense, when the work is being consumed in India, IPRS is collecting the royalties, and when it is being done in UK, it is the PRS, is what my understanding. Now, in terms of the inter-se arrangement, the reciprocity between both the organizations, how does the royalty payment through PRS to IPRS, what's collected in UK, and vice versa, happens? Like, what's the mechanism? I just wanted to understand.
Sure.
And also, like in such situations where there is reciprocity between the organizations, because you are in different jurisdictions, is there a restriction that you need not register into societies, or how does it play out? I just wanted to understand that.
Sure.
Thank you.
So there are lots and lots of societies. Technically speaking, you can actually join all the societies that exist on this planet. But that's what you want to avoid. So now your question is, if you're a member of IPRS, then you would also define which territories IPRS will be collecting for you. Okay? Say for example, you have said IPRS will be collecting from all over Asia. And you have joined PRS for the rest of the world. Okay? So now, depending upon where your music is performed, say if your music is performed in India, IPRS is anyway licensing that on your behalf and paying it to you directly. So that money is not going to be passed on to PRS.
Sure.
When your work is performed in the UK or in the rest of the world territory minus Asia, then PRS is collecting it and paying it to you directly. That money is not going to be passed to IPRS to pay you.
All right. Understood. Yeah. Thank you.
So generally, there are some 200 odd societies. So when I register with IPRS or PRS as my home society, so when I register a song with one society, does the society send out their data every other society, which means does every society have every single piece of music that has been created in the world?
The answer is no. Because there is a centralized database which is called SysNet, which is kind of set up by CSAC. All society data should be available on the SysNet. So for example, if there is a song that is being performed in India, and you look up on your database and you don't find that registration, the next port of call is obviously looking up who are the writers of the. So if the writer is a member of PRS solely, likely that the song will be registered with PRS. Now there are two things that can be done. One is obviously requesting the data from PRS so that you can put it in your system, or you can go to SysNet and download that data. So that is the mechanism that exists in order for the societies to be able to access other societies' data if that doesn't exist on their database.
So basically, SysNet is the repository of all the information.
Yes.
And for the writer to be identified, there is a CAE/IPI number.
Yes, there
Let's
is.
talk a bit about that.
Sure. So when anybody.
So thank you for that. SysNet, we have just taken an initiative with SysNet because SysNet contains millions of books across all societies. So sometimes it becomes extremely difficult for a particular song to be found out from SysNet. You really don't know. So we had some discussion with SysNet to load a particular song into SysNet, search it as SysNet, and download it into the society. Ultimately, you need to find the song, but then get it into the database of the society for the distribution to happen. So, SysNet has already accepted that proposal and they're working on that.
Yeah.
So IPI.
Yeah, so essentially what happens, like I was mentioning about SysNet, there is a centralized database that can be accessed by societies. Similarly, the way membership works, there is another centralized system which is called the IPI system, Interested Party Information System. which is used by the societies in order to ensure when they ingest the information about a member, a particular identifier is generated. And that identifier essentially is your membership number. And that remains same regardless of how many societies you join. What I mean by that, when the first society that you have joined have ingested your details into the IPI system, it will generate the IPI number for you, which we call it as CA number. You know, some call it as IPI number, but generally it is known as IPI number. That IPI number will have the information of which society you are of and what territories that society is going to be licensing on your behalf. Next, when you join, say for example, PRS, and you have decided to be PRS X number of territories, then the IPI system will be modified by both the societies. One society would release those territories for you to join the other society for those territories. So essentially that IPI system is very, very important to ensure the information of you and your affiliation to multiple societies and which territories it is for.
Guys, we have one last question.
Yeah, because the session is on interoperability of the societies. So I had a question. Suppose like you must be asking for some documents during membership. Then IPRS also does. So here we use the name that it is on the PAN card. Suppose a person has a middle name, so that becomes his name for application.
Yeah.
Maybe for you it might be some other document where we have seen members who have joined say PRS, has omitted the middle name. So basis the first name and the second name in Suisa, which is the IPI generator, they have generated the IPI number. Now that person, when he is joining IPRS for India territory or certain Asia territories, he is giving the PAN card and we are feeding the name with the first name, middle name and the last name. So in Suisa, they don't know that these two are the same person. So maybe a different IPI is getting generated. So how then does IPRS and PRS collaborate here to sort this issue so that these two people, these two IPI are seen as the same person and we can solve this issue?
Sure, I think the best way to kind of resolve this is, I think what we do is we take the passport, the name on the passport as the main name, the patronym for the member. Now sometimes on the passport the middle name is not there, so that's where the issue comes. And also in India, like I know, customary, the name of the father becomes the middle name, or name of the husband can become the middle name. So there are different customs in this country. Now, I think between the two societies, as long as we are able to decide on certain checkpoints where we check the passport, we check the PAN card, we check the Aadhaar card, when we're ingesting the person's information. So for example, a person is already a member of IPRS, therefore there is already a CA number generated, IPI number generated. Once we have that IPI number, then we should be able to check what name is on the IPI system. Now, the problem comes if the IPI system has the first name, middle name and surname, whereas the passport doesn't have, then we would need to ensure to ask them for any other documentation that they may have which has got that name, and basically accept that documentation and ingest that information accordingly. I think it's a matter of ensuring that the number of documents that we need to check is considered. That's how we would resolve this problem.
Hey, I have a question.
I
So let's say like events like these, which are like closed door events, and I suppose the venue also has some sort of blanket license for playing whatever songs they want. How the artists are getting all the royalties out of that, because we can't pinpoint what exactly songs were played, and how does that specific artist get those royalties out of it?
Well, I think there is a challenge there, like I mentioned. Where there is no data, or where there is no data available, basically, that's where we have to kind of rely on analogy. And with that analogy, say for example, your music is being played here in this building, and your music is also played in, say, an FM station. And if the FM station's reporting is used as an analogy for this venue, then likely that you will get paid. Does it make sense? Yeah, because we're using that data of the radio station to pay for the money that we have collected for this venue. Unfortunately, if it's something else as an analogy, that will not capture. And that's the hard truth.
But is like PRS or even other PROs working towards getting into more data management and just capturing all these?
Yeah, absolutely. So we in PRS in the UK, we work with music recognition technology, DJ Monitor. We are working with them, and I think we have started working with Adobe. Yeah, exactly for this reason, we would insert a device which is listening all the time and recording the music and capturing the data. So that's already in process, but we also have to understand the cost and all of that. But yes, we are using MRT to do that. Thank you. Yeah? Okay. Sorry, I think I'll have to vacate the room for the next session. But thank you very much for your patience and your time.